Sociological Theory 101, a brief introduction to key sociological concepts. Sociological theory provides the intellectual foundation for the discipline of sociology. It offers frameworks for understanding how societies are structured, how they function and change, and how individuals relate to social systems and one another. Theories allow sociologists to move beyond surface-level descriptions and instead ask deeper questions about power, identity, inequality, and meaning. Sociological theories vary in scope and scale. Some examine the grand architecture of society, institutions like the economy, the state, or religion, while others focus on micro-level interactions that give shape to everyday life. Theories can be explanatory, helping us understand why certain patterns occur, or critical, exposing the inequalities embedded within those patterns. What unites all sociological theories is the belief that human behavior is shaped by social forces, not just individual choice. Classical foundations of sociological theory. Modern sociology emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as industrialization, urbanization, and political revolution reshaped social life. Four thinkers, Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, and Georg Simmel, laid the groundwork for sociological theory. Each developed a distinct approach, offering enduring insights into the nature of society. Karl Marx viewed human history as a series of class struggles rooted in economic structures. In capitalist societies, he argued, the bourgeoisie, those who own the means of production, exploit the proletariat, who sell their labor for wages. This exploitative relationship creates inequality and alienation, leaving workers disconnected from the products of their labor, their fellow workers, and their own human potential. Marx believed that capitalism contained the seeds of its own destruction. He anticipated that rising tensions between capital and labor would eventually spark revolution, leading to a classless society built on collective ownership and cooperation. While his predictions have not fully materialized, Marx's theory of class conflict remains central to analyses of inequality, exploitation, and social change. Emile Durkheim, Social Cohesion and the Moral Order. Emile Durkheim sought to establish sociology as a scientific discipline by focusing on the study of social facts, external forces like laws, norms, and institutions that shape individual behavior. He believed that societies require cohesion and shared values to function effectively, and he introduced the concept of the collective conscience to describe the moral framework that binds individuals together. Durkheim distinguished between two types of solidarity. Mechanical solidarity characterizes traditional societies, where people share similar roles and values. Organic solidarity emerges in modern societies, where individuals perform specialized roles and depend on one another for survival. His groundbreaking study of suicide demonstrated how variations in social integration and regulation could explain patterns in what is typically considered a deeply personal act. Max Weber, Meaning, Power, and Rationalization. Max Weber added a cultural and interpretive dimension to sociological theory. He argued that to understand social action, we must grasp the meanings individuals attach to their behavior. This approach, known as Verstehen, emphasized empathy and interpretation as core methods in sociology. Weber examined how religious ideas, particularly Protestant values like discipline and frugality, played a role in the rise of capitalism. He also developed a typology of authority, traditional authority based on custom, charismatic authority based on personal appeal, and rational legal authority rooted in rules and institutions. Weber was especially concerned about the increasing rationalization of modern life. As bureaucracies and systems of calculation expanded, he warned of an iron cage where individuals are trapped in impersonal, rule-bound institutions. Georg Simmel, Forms of Interaction in the Modern Mind. Georg Simmel approached sociology through a focus on the dynamic processes of everyday life. Rather than seeing society as a structure imposed on individuals, he viewed it as a web of interactions continuously shaped and reshaped by people's relationships. He introduced the concept of social forms, patterns such as exchange, conflict, secrecy, and hierarchy, that organize interaction regardless of the specific content involved. Simmel also explored the psychological effects of modernity, In his famous essay, The Metropolis and Mental Life, he argued that urban living creates a sensory overload that forces individuals to adopt a blasé attitude as a coping mechanism. He examined how money, fashion, and individuality are all implicated in modern social life, blurring the line between personal freedom and social conformity. Simmel's emphasis on complexity, ambiguity, and the subtleties of interaction paved the way for later developments in symbolic interactionism and cultural sociology. Structural functionalism, society as a system. Structural functionalism emerged in the mid-20th century as a dominant framework for understanding how society maintains stability. It views society as a system composed of interdependent parts, such as families, schools, governments, and economies, each of which perform specific functions to ensure the survival of the whole. Talcott Parsons argued that every society must meet basic functional requirements, including adaptation to the environment, goal attainment, integration, and the maintenance of values. Robert Merton extended this view by distinguishing between manifest functions, which are intended and visible, and latent functions, which are unintended but still impactful. For example, while schools are designed to educate, they also serve the latent function of socializing young people into norms and expectations. Critics of structural functionalism argue that it overlooks power, conflict, and inequality. By focusing on order and stability, it can appear to legitimize the status quo and ignore the struggles of marginalized groups. Still, the framework remains influential for understanding institutional roles and social reproduction. Conflict theory, power, inequality, and resistance. Conflict theory challenges the harmonious image of society promoted by functionalism. It sees social life as marked by competition over scarce resources and shaped by power imbalances. Building on Marx's legacy, conflict theorists argue that dominant groups use ideology, law, media, and institutions to maintain control and suppress opposition. Modern conflict theory expands beyond economic class to examine race, gender, sexuality, and other forms of stratification. Scholars such as C. Wright Mills highlighted how a power elite composed of political, corporate, and military leaders influences major decisions behind the scenes. Conflict theorists explore how institutions reproduce inequality and how social change often emerges through resistance, protest, and collective action. This approach is particularly valuable in studying institutional racism, systemic sexism, labor struggles, and movements for justice. It reveals the deep-rooted inequalities embedded in everyday structures and encourages a critical stance toward established norms. Symbolic interactionism, meaning in everyday life. Symbolic interactionism offers a micro-level approach that examines how people create and interpret meaning in social interactions. It is grounded in the idea that society is not an external force, but is produced and maintained through repeated symbolic exchanges. Language, gestures, and shared meanings are central to this process. George Herbert Mead emphasized the development of the self through interaction, particularly the ability to take the role of the other and see oneself from another's perspective. Herbert Blumer further developed this tradition, arguing that meaning arises from social interaction and is constantly being redefined. Irving Goffman built on these ideas with his dramaturgical theory, likening social life to a theatrical performance where individuals manage impressions and present different versions of themselves in different contexts. Symbolic interactionism is particularly useful for studying identity, stigma, deviance, and the microdynamics of power. It highlights how meaning is negotiated and how social roles are actively performed rather than passively received. Feminist theory, gender, power, and intersectionality. Feminist theory foregrounds gender as a central dimension of social life and critiques the male-centric assumptions embedded in traditional sociological thought. It explores how patriarchy shapes institutions, knowledge production, and everyday experience. Feminist scholars examine issues such as the division of domestic labor, gender-based violence, reproductive rights, and political representation. There are diverse strands of feminist theory. Liberal feminism advocates for equality through legal and institutional reform. Radical feminism emphasizes the structural roots of gender oppression. Marxist and socialist feminists analyze the relationship between capitalism and patriarchy. Intersectional feminism, developed by scholars such as Kimberly Crenshaw, highlights how race, class, sexuality, and other identities intersect to shape lived experiences of oppression and privilege. Feminist theory has also influenced research methods by emphasizing reflexivity, positionality, and the importance of centering marginalized voices. It continues to shape contemporary debates on gender justice, identity, and social transformation. Postmodern and post-structuralist perspectives, knowledge, power, and fragmentation. Postmodern and post-structuralist theories question the existence of universal truths, stable identities, and overarching narratives. These perspectives emphasize that reality is constructed through discourse, representation, and power relations. They challenge the idea that social phenomena can be fully explained through objective, rational analysis. Michel Foucault is a central figure in this tradition. He examined how power operates through institutions, knowledge systems, and norms. His work on prisons, sexuality, and medicine showed how categories of normality and deviance are historically produced and politically charged. He introduced the concepts of discourse and biopower to describe how modern societies govern bodies and populations. Other postmodern theorists, such as Jean Baudrillard, argued that contemporary life is dominated by signs and simulations that obscure any underlying reality. In a world of hyperreality, images become more real than the events they represent. While sometimes criticized for relativism or obscurity, these theories have opened new ways of thinking about identity, culture, and authority in an increasingly mediated and fragmented world. Theories of globalization, flows, hybridity, and uneven development. As globalization transforms economies, cultures, and politics, sociological theory has responded with new frameworks to understand these shifts. Globalization involves the intensified movement of people, goods, ideas, and information across borders. It reconfigures social relations on a planetary scale and challenges traditional models of society based on the nation-state. Theorists such as Anthony Giddens emphasize the stretching of social relations across time and space, while Arjun Appadurai focuses on global flows of media, finance, and culture. Globalization theory explores how identities become hybridized, how local traditions are reshaped by global forces, and how inequality is reproduced through global labor markets and digital divides. At the same time, globalization generates resistance. Social movements, environmental campaigns, and cultural revivals all respond to the disruptions and displacements caused by global integration. These theories help illuminate both the possibilities and the contradictions of a rapidly changing world. Conclusion: the power of theoretical pluralism. Sociological theory is not a fixed canon, but a living tradition. Each theoretical perspective offers different tools, insights, and critiques. Classical thinkers like Marx, Durkheim, Weber, and Simmel established foundational questions about power, order, meaning, and interaction. Later developments, structural functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, feminist theory, poststructuralism, and globalization studies have expanded and challenged these foundations. In today's world of accelerating change and complexity, theoretical pluralism is not a weakness, but a strength. No single theory can explain all dimensions of social life. By engaging with diverse perspectives, sociologists can better understand the multifaceted realities of inequality, identity, institutions, and transformation. Whether used to analyze small group dynamics or global systems, sociological theory equips us to ask better questions, uncover hidden patterns, and imagine more just and inclusive futures. Stay tuned for more insights into business and the social sciences. If you found this overview helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on future topics you'd like us to cover. I'm Dr. Dag, wishing you a fantastic day ahead.